Hi, I'm Buddy Gibbons. I'm a professional drummer. You've heard me play on thousands of television commercials, broadcasts, sports shows, and film scores. You've never heard of me, but you've definitely heard me. But that almost wasn't my life at all. The year was 2008. My wife and I had moved to Los Angeles after a stint in Nashville. I knew that I had to work incredibly hard to establish myself in the uber-competitive LA music scene. I searched out work in every nook and cranny of Craigslist, the LA Weekly, the Recycler, and I took every gig that I could, over 300 of them. I began having some trouble with my right arm, numbness, tingling, pain. Eventually the pain became so intense that I could no longer lift a bottle of water. I had to hug a pillow any time I was sitting just so that I could keep my arm in a specific position where it didn't hurt quite as badly. As you can imagine, that made things quite difficult for someone in my line of work. I had played my arm to death. I knew it was time to seek medical help. I began with my general practitioner. She couldn't figure out what the problem was because my symptoms didn't perfectly match any of the syndromes, problems, and injuries she was familiar with. So we decided to go the route of cortisone shots. Over the next year and a half, I had so many shots that I actually considered getting an X tattooed on the spot where my elbow pain originated. Right there. I figured I could take the guesswork out that way. But the reality was that the shots weren't a cure, they were only a treatment. And my career was in serious jeopardy. I sought out a surgeon and ran across some seriously questionable ideas about fixing my elbow. Not the least of which was the suggestion by a doctor who wanted to take a hammer and chisel to my bones, only to give me a 70% chance of recovery. No thanks. Finally, I met a truly caring surgeon in Pasadena, and she said to me, "I can't fix your elbow, but I have an idea." That idea was to get me into occupational therapy. My occupational therapist was a wonderful person, and I could tell that she was both sympathetic and empathetic to my situation. We worked for several months with little to no change in my pain level and functionality. My body had begun to shut down in other ways as well. Muscles were tightening all over my body. I was no longer moving in a normal manner at all. Photos taken of me during that time show that I was wearing pain face everywhere I went. I still have a hard time looking at pictures from that time in my life. In the meantime, my case became something of a talking point in the hospital's therapy department. It was finally determined that the best chance I had for recovery was to move from occupational therapy to physical therapy. Enter Emma Green. Long before she was the tennis elbow queen, she was just the latest person in whom I was putting my hope. My previous experience with physical therapy had not been particularly positive, but I was desperate for help. She walked into the room, this tiny English lady with a charming smile and a deeply caring demeanor. I could feel how much interest she had in me and my case. Beyond her obvious care, however, was a keenly curious mind. She wanted to figure me out. She wanted to help me. We began my therapy sessions. They did not go well. I was getting quite frustrated because for the first few weeks, we never touched my elbow. Finally, in my despair, I asked her to please explain to me why we were working on my back, my shoulder, my big toe. Not really. So she calmly took me down the hall to meet Henry, the life-sized, half-muscle, half-bone skeleton in the other exam room. She showed me how my muscles, tendons, ligaments, and bones connected to each other, and how one movement was part of the bigger picture of many movements. My neck and back were so tight that there was no way my elbow would be able to heal until she got the rest of my body moving the correct way. From that moment on, I knew that, no matter how long it took, I was going to be okay. She really did understand. She saw the big picture. A few weeks went by, and I achieved a modicum of progress on my neck and shoulders. In fact, I could now turn my head like a normal person. Then it happened. "Buddy, I've got an idea." I was certain I'd heard that line before. So what exactly was Emma's idea? She had devised a therapy for the elbow based on the science of repairing an Achilles tendon. She explained in great detail how she could see the principles of the Achilles treatment working to repair the damage inside my elbow. So we began. Day one, she showed me the exercise. I was skeptical. After all, what good would an exercise with a 1 pound weight do me, a 6'2", 230 pound, athletically built man? I scoffed at the idea until I couldn't complete the movement with that small amount of weight. That's how damaged my elbow was. That's how much pain I was in. She instructed me to go home and do that exercise twice a day, 3 sets. It was difficult to admit just how weak I was. It was embarrassing. It was frustrating, but I did the work. Eventually, I could get through the sets with 1 pound, then 2 pounds. I began to feel a little bit of relief. I didn't hurt constantly. I didn't have to sleep with a pillow tucked into my arm every single night. Each visit with Emma, she'd measure my grip strength and put me through the paces of the exercise. She'd still mobilize my back and shoulders. She'd still push me to increase the weight. Then came that Tuesday morning. I'll never forget it. I'd gotten up and was fixing myself a bowl of Captain Crunch. I reached into the refrigerator, took out the milk, poured it over the cereal, replaced the milk in the fridge, and closed the door. With my damaged right arm. I had no pain at all. In fact, it felt so natural that I didn't realize what I'd done until I was halfway into the living room with my prized sugary treat. When it hit me, I sat the bowl down again with my right arm and began to sob. I called my wife and told her what had happened. She cried at her office. We celebrated that night as if it was the biggest news we'd ever gotten. Why? Because that was the moment I got my life back. It's been over a decade now, and my elbow is still as good as new. If I ever feel any issues coming on, I turn to the exercises Emma created for me, and I'm back to 100% within a day or two. The gratitude and love I feel for Emma is many levels deep. I'm thrilled that the techniques she created for my issues have helped so many other people overcome their own elbow problems. It wasn't always easy, but it was miraculous for me. I'll always be indebted to and thankful for the tiny English woman who healed my elbow. My friend, the tennis elbow queen, Emma Green. Thanks, Emma.